Today I'll be interviewing Peter Dennis. Peter Dennis is a retired human resources professional, and over his career he has held senior management positions in a variety of Canadian organizations. Peter has been a lecturer and professor at the university and college levels, and for over 10 years he managed his own human resources consulting firm. Peter is a past president of the Richmond Hill Chamber of Commerce, Windsor and District Human Resources Professionals Association, and the Ontario chapter of the International Graphical Analysis Society. These days, Peter enjoys life as an author, lecturer, a Nordic pole walking instructor, and as a certified consulting hypnotist, helping people get from where they are to where they want to be. Peter has authored several books, and he regularly speaks and teaches courses on the subjects of spirituality, meditation, hypnosis, stress management, and handwriting analysis. Please welcome Peter Dennis. Peter, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat about your involvement with our project.
Oh, it's a pleasure, George. Thank you very much for having me.
Peter, there's lots of fantastic information in your chapter titled Meditation, the Ultimate Stress Reducer, and I'd like to expand on this in our webinar.
Sure.
So first of all, what is meditation?
Well, meditation is a state of awareness. It's something that happens when the nervous system is triggered, and there's a number of physiological and chemical things that actually happen. For example, the body becomes very relaxed. Brain waves change from beta waves to alpha waves. You can see this on an electroencephalograph if you allow yourself to be hooked up. Metabolism drops. The senses become a little more acute. The unconscious mind comes more to the fore, and we become more receptive and more responsive to suggestion. In these ways, this altered state of consciousness is very similar to hypnosis. And as you know, in hypnosis, we're more receptive to suggestion, and the same is the case for meditation, where you can self-suggest, you might say, using affirmations and visualization. But simply, I guess you could say it's a state where the body relaxes deeply and the mind becomes a little more alert.
That's great information, Peter. You actually just answered the next couple of questions I have as far as like what happens to an individual when he or she meditates, as well as some of the benefits. Question for you over here. I was wondering how meditation actually combats stress.
Well, it does it in many ways. There's a number of chemicals. For example, there's a reduction in cortisol, which is known as the stress hormone. There's an increase in serotonin, sometimes known as the happy transmitter or neurotransmitter. The longevity molecule is increased. GABA, the calming neurotransmitter, and endorphins are actually increased. So on a chemical basis, yes, it calms us down, but what is more difficult to measure and to really pinpoint is that long-term meditation, in my opinion, expands consciousness. And as we expand our consciousness, we just tend to be more aware of the bigger picture, and that seems to somehow just relax us a little more about life in general. So that may be more subtle, and I'm not sure science can really get a handle on it, but if you ask a lot of long-term meditators about changes in their lives, I think they'll all report that since they've been meditating, they find life is easier and they're much more calmer about things that used to bother them.
I find that very interesting, because it's an odd combination of heightened awareness and relaxation at the same time.
Yes.
You kind of think that one would not go with the other necessarily, but it looks like we are getting the best of both worlds, so to speak.
Yes, in a state of meditation, if a door slams or a telephone rings, it's a little bit jarring. And, I guess it's important to do this in a quiet place where those things are not likely to happen. But, it does seem initially a little contradictory, but, that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm. And Peter, how does one meditate?
Well, there's all kinds of ways, but it's really a very simple process. I've developed, you might call a 6-step procedure, but could make it a number of steps, any number probably. But I would suggest that you select, first of all, a quiet environment where you're not likely to be disturbed, and make sure you have that area to yourself for about 20 minutes or so. It's a good idea to sit on something that's rather firm so that the spinal column is pretty straight. Some people prefer to lie down. That's okay, but if you're a little sleep deprived, you might fall asleep and then you won't be meditating. You'll be doing something else. But good idea to sit in a fairly straight back chair, not something too cushy. Feet generally flat on the floor, nothing crossed, unless you can do the lotus position. And if you can, you're setting up a little tripod with your tailbone and your two knees, and that's a good position. But if I were to do that, I'd never get up again, probably.
I see.
I guess next you might just assume passive mind, you might say, and allow it to happen. Meditation is very different from many of the things we've been conditioned to do. If you try and do it, you strive, you push, it's not going to happen. Those things are going to interfere with it. So you have to be rather passive about it. As well, you have to realize that the mind can only be on one thing at a time. So what you want to do is put your mind on something that you choose. And that's usually referred to as a mantra. It can be a spot on the wall, it can be a sound, it can be a number of things. But I prefer generally starting out that people close their eyes to avoid a lot of visual distraction and then focus on their breathing. Yes. And I think in the literature you'll find that's what most people start out with anyway. And it helps to keep your attention on the breathing if you use some words. And my students seem to gravitate towards simply in and out. They don't say the words, they don't whisper them, they just think them in, out, in sync with their breath. Now, if you're like most people, and maybe even Buddhist monks, your mind will wander, and it'll latch on to some of the everyday chatter and stuff that's going on. That's okay, that's normal. Just when you notice it, bring your attention back to your breathing. And if you continue with your breathing, you'll find that probably, and it'll vary, and the more practice you are at it, it'll happen quicker, but starting out maybe 10 minutes or so, that response in the nervous system is triggered, and all of a sudden you're meditating. I guess I would say just continue as long as you feel comfortable. Generally, the literature would recommend maybe 15 to 20 minutes at a sitting. Some people have to work up to that. I know when I first started, I couldn't sit still for 10 minutes. But now half an hour is easy for me. It just depends what else is going on.
I find I'm the same way. It's like either I'm very active or I'm sleeping. So it's like even a simple task is watching a movie with a friend of mine for a couple hours, and that's a challenge for me, regardless of how great a film it is. I can certainly relate to just trying to be in one position, even just for as little as 5 minutes. So I find that with some practice, I am getting better at it.
Yeah. I think most people have the same finding.
And Peter, when and where should one meditate?
I don't know there's too many shoulds about that. I've meditated on airplanes, subways, buses. Ideally, you would like to do it in a quiet, peaceful place where there's no interruptions, but you can't always find those. And as you get more practiced at it, then you'll surprise yourself that you can meditate in many circumstances.
Very helpful tips. And how frequently and how long at a time should one meditate?
Well, I guess you can read a number of people on this, and generally they would say at least once a day and probably 15 to 20 minutes at each sitting. The transcendental meditation people advocate twice a day, and yes, if you can do it, I think you will become a better meditator quicker, but life often gets in the way, and that isn't so practical for everybody. There are some people that just really get excited about it, and they will meditate for long periods of time. I have one friend who'll do it for 5 hours, and I don't know where she is, but
well, I can't fathom that kind of time out of my day.
Yeah. No, I've known people. I had one client who was a chartered accountant, and before a stressful meeting, he'd just close the door to his office for about 5 minutes, and he would just get nice and mellow, and he found he could go into those meetings and just articulate and express himself a whole lot better and more calmly.
I see.